The smell of rotting medicine wasn't the worst part. It was the sound of someone or something trying to breathe through a throat filled with dust. If you're watching this late at night, make sure you're alone. These are not just stories. They are memories that shouldn't have been disturbed. If tales like these keep you awake, subscribe to The Void. Let's begin. I never liked hospitals, even the ones with the lights on. But when Sarah suggested the Old Mercy Asylum for a night shoot, I said yes. I was tired of my job. Tired of the same routine. I needed the adrenaline. I thought I was looking for a thrill, but looking back, I was just looking for trouble. We broke in through the basement. It was freezing, that kind of cold that feels like a physical weight on your chest. The asylum had been closed since 1994, abandoned after a series of structural failures that everyone knew was just a cover-up for something darker. As we climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, the air changed. It didn't smell like mold or decay anymore. It smelled like bleach. Fresh, stinging, chemical bleach. Sarah was 10 feet ahead of me. She was the brave one, or so I thought. Her flashlight beam was a thin line cutting through the thick, floating dust. Suddenly, she stopped. She didn't turn around. She just stood there, her light fixed on a door at the very end of the long hallway. In an abandoned building, every door is either wide open or hanging off its hinges. But this door was perfectly closed, perfectly clean. Do you hear that? Sarah whispered. Her voice was thin, trembling in a way I'd never heard before. I stopped. I held my breath until my lungs burned. At first, there was nothing but the sound of my own blood rushing in my ears. Then, a faint, rhythmic sound drifted through the dark. It was mechanical. Thump, hiss, thump, hiss. It sounded exactly like an old hospital ventilator. I tried to be the rational one. I told myself it was just the wind trapped in the pipes. I told myself the building was just settling. But pipes don't sigh. Pipes don't have a pulse. And the bleach smell was becoming overwhelming, making my eyes water. We should go, I said, but my feet didn't move. It was like the hallway was stretching, pulling us toward that clean white door. Sarah reached out. Her hand was shaking as she touched the cold brass handle. The moment she gripped it, the mechanical sound stopped. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the kind of silence that feels like someone has placed their hands over your ears. The door creaked open, just an inch. A wave of heat hit us. Not the warmth of a heater, but the damp, sickly heat of a room full of people. And then the smell changed again. The bleach was gone. Now it was the smell of unwashed bodies and old iron. I leaned forward, just enough to see inside. The room wasn't empty. There were no beds, no equipment. Just rows of 4 poles standing in the dark like thin metal skeletons. And hanging from the poles were bags of clear fluid, swaying gently as if someone had just walked past them. Then Sarah's flashlight flickered. In that split second of darkness, I heard it. A wet, sandpaper voice from the corner of the room, right near the ceiling. Is it time for my medicine? I didn't wait to see who or what the voice belonged to. I grabbed Sarah's jacket and pulled her back. We ran. We didn't look for the stairs. We stumbled through the darkness, our flashlights dancing wildly against the peeling wallpaper. I could hear footsteps behind us, not boots like ours. These were bare feet, slapping rhythmically against the wet floor. They were fast, faster than us. We burst through the basement exit, gasping for air that didn't taste like bleach. We didn't stop until we reached the car. Sarah didn't speak the whole way home. She didn't speak for a week. I still have the clothes I wore that night. I've washed them 10 times, but sometimes when I open my closet in the middle of the night, I can still smell it. That sharp, stinging scent of bleach. And sometimes, when the house is too quiet, I hear that rhythmic hiss in the hallway outside my bedroom. I used to think the worst part of that night was the fear of being caught. Now I know the worst part is the realization that we weren't the ones who broke in. We were just guests. And whatever is still in room 402, it's still waiting for its medicine. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what followed. It's how ordinary it all began. Would you have pushed that door open? Or would you have trusted your gut and ran? Write in the comments. I think 98% of people run, and the 2% who stay behind are probably not found. Most people think abandoned hospitals are empty. They think once the funding stops and the patients are moved, the building just waits. But after what happened at St. Jude's, I realized that some buildings don't just wait. They keep working. They keep demanding. My name is Joshua. In 2023, I was desperate. I had lost my job. My rent was 3 months late, and my pride was gone. When a private security firm offered me a stationary night shift at an old, decommissioned children's hospital on the edge of town, I didn't ask questions. The pay was double the market rate. I told myself it was easy money. I told myself I just had to sit in a booth for 8 hours. The supervisor, a man with eyes that looked like they hadn't seen sleep in a decade, gave me only 3 rules. 1. Stay in the security office between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. 2. If you hear a bell ringing, do not look at the monitors. 3. Never, under any circumstances, go to the basement. I laughed it off. I thought it was just some hazing ritual for the new guy. The first week was fine. Just me, a thermos of black coffee, and the silence of 1,000 empty rooms. But by the second week, the silence started to feel heavy. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the presence of a weight. Like the building was holding its breath, waiting for me to fail. It started on a Tuesday. 2:15 a.m. I was sitting in the booth, scrolling through my phone, when the monitors flickered. All 12 screens went to static for a second, then cleared. I shouldn't have looked. But rule number 2 is the kind of rule that creates its own curiosity. On camera 4, the hallway leading to the old pediatric ward, there was a bell on the wall. An old-fashioned service bell. It was swinging, back and forth, back and forth. And then the sound hit me. Ding. It was a sharp, clean sound that cut through the hum of the monitors. My stomach dropped. I remembered the supervisor's face. Do not look at the monitors. I tried to turn away, but my eyes were locked. A small figure appeared at the end of the hallway. It was a child, maybe 6 or 7 years old, wearing a hospital gown that was far too large. The kid wasn't walking. He was standing perfectly still, but with every flicker of the camera, he was 10 feet closer. Ding. He was at the camera now. He leaned in, his face filling the screen, but he didn't have eyes. Where the eyes should have been, there were only dark, wet hollows. His mouth moved. No sound came through the speakers, but I could read his lips perfectly. Help me find my room. I turned off the monitors. My hands were shaking so hard I spilled my coffee. I sat in the dark, staring at the door of the security office, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in years. I stayed there until the sun came up. When the supervisor arrived at 8 a.m., I told him I quit. I didn't want the money. I just wanted out. He didn't look surprised. He just sighed and sat down. You looked at the screen, didn't you, Joshua? What is that place? I demanded. Who is that kid? The supervisor looked at the blank monitors. That kid is the reason we have this job. St. Jude's wasn't just a hospital. It was a debt. When it closed, not all the patients were transferred. Some were. Forgotten in the basement. Our job isn't to protect the building from the world. It's to protect the world from what's left in the building. I walked out and never looked back. But the debt didn't stay at St. Jude's. That was a year ago. I moved to a different city. I got a different job. But every night, exactly at 2:15 a.m., the doorbell of my apartment rings. Ding. I don't have a camera on my door. I don't need one, because I can hear the soft slap of bare feet on the carpet outside my bedroom. And I can hear a small, wet voice whispering through the keyhole. You saw me, Joshua. Now you have to help me find my room. I haven't slept more than 2 hours a night since then. I'm tired. I'm so incredibly tired. My doctor says it's paranoia. My friends say it's stress. But they don't see the small, wet handprints on my windows every morning. They don't smell the scent of sterile gauze and old blood that follows me everywhere. I realize now that the supervisor wasn't protecting the world. He was just waiting for someone else to take his place. Someone else to see. Because once you see the forgotten, they never let you forget them. I'm staring at my bedroom door right now, hoping the doorknob doesn't turn slowly and silently tonight. I don't know how much longer I can take this. I just want my peace back. Trauma is a ghost that doesn't need a haunted house to live in. It follows you home. It stays on your desk. It waits beside your bed. Tell me, have you ever ignored a rule, only to realize that the rule was the only thing keeping you safe? If you've made it this far, leave a comment so I know. And what is your biggest fear? Tell us, and leave a like so the video reaches more people. There is a specific kind of silence you only find in the basement of a psychiatric ward. It's not a peaceful silence. It's heavy. It's a silence that feels like it's screaming under its breath, waiting for a single crack in the floor to let it all out. My name is Marcus. I've spent 10 years as a professional plumber. I've seen everything from flooded basements to burst city mains, so I thought I was immune to creepy places. But in late 2024, I was contracted by a city demolition crew to map the old drainage system of the Northwood Institute before they leveled it. I needed the money for my daughter's surgery. That was my justification. Every time my flashlight hit a rusted gurney or a pile of rotting patient files, I just thought about the medical bills. I used my family as a shield against the fear. I didn't realize that in places like Northwood, your love is just another thing for the dark to feed on. The basement was a labyrinth of lead pipes and moldy concrete. According to the blueprints, there was a central drainage hub beneath the old hydrotherapy wing. In the 1950s, that was just a fancy word for drowning patients until they stopped being difficult. As I waded through ankle-deep stagnant water, the air started to vibrate. It wasn't a sound at first. It was a feeling in my teeth, a low-frequency hum that made my skin crawl. My flashlight began to dim, the batteries draining faster than they ever had before. Just 10 more minutes, I whispered to myself. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the wet stone walls. I reached the hubba, massive circular room with a single iron drain in the center, at least 4 feet wide. I knelt down to check the seal, and that's when I heard it. Gurgle. Splash. It came from deep inside the pipe. It sounded like someone trying to talk while their mouth was full of water. I froze. The sound of my name coming out of a sewer pipe in a building that had been empty for 30 years didn't just scare me. It broke something inside my head. I told myself it was the acoustic mirror effect. The wind hitting the pipes in a certain way to mimic human speech. Then, the water in the drain started to rise. It wasn't the black, filthy water of the basement. It was clear, bubbling, and it smelled like baby shampoo, the exact brand I used for my daughter. I should have run. I saw a reflection in the rising water. It wasn't me. It was a woman, dressed in a nurse's uniform from a different era, standing right behind me. I spun around. Nothing, just the dark and the sound of my own frantic breathing. When I looked back at the drain, the water had poured over the edges, and sitting in the middle of the floor, soaked and shivering, was a small leather-bound book, a patient log. I picked it up. The pages were wet, but the ink hadn't bled. I flipped to the last entry, dated November 12, 1962. It read, Patient 402 refused to stop screaming. We placed him in the hub. He said the water told him his father was coming to save him. We told him his father had forgotten him. He stopped screaming after 3 hours. Underneath the text, there was a drawing. A crude, childish sketch of a man with a wrench and a flashlight. A man who looked exactly like me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a random job. This place had been pulling me in for years. The debt, the bills, the chance encounter with the demolition crew. It was all a path leading to this drain. Then, the lights on my headlamp died completely. In the absolute darkness, the splashing started again. But it wasn't coming from the drain anymore. It was coming from all around me. The sound of dozens of bare feet wading through the water. I could feel the cold, wet pressure of small hands touching my ankles, my knees, my back. Dad? A voice whispered. It sounded like my daughter. But it wasn't her. It was a hollow imitation. A trap set by a building that was hungry for a father's grief. I scrambled back, screaming, hitting the walls until I found the ladder. I climbed until my fingernails bled, bursting out of the basement and into the night air. I didn't stop running until I was miles away. But I didn't leave Northwood behind. I went home. I kissed my daughter. I tried to sleep. But when I turned on the faucet to brush my teeth, the water didn't come out clear. It came out black and smelling of the basement. And as I looked into the sink, I heard that wet, sandpaper voice coming up through the pipes. You left us in the dark, Marcus. But the pipes all lead to the same place. Yesterday, my daughter asked me why there's a man standing in the corner of her bathroom. She says he's wet, and he's holding a wrench, and he looks just like me, but he doesn't have a face. We think we can walk away from the things we see. We think the door closes when we leave the room. But some places don't let go. They find the one thing you love most, and they use it to pull you back into the dark. Tell me, what's the one sound in your house you've been trying to ignore? Share the video with your friends if you're enjoying it. This helps us grow and reach more people. Thank you. If any of these stories felt familiar, maybe that's the real warning. The shadows in the corner of your eye aren't just tricks of the light. They are memories waiting for you to remember them. If you're still here, you've survived the night shift. For now, check the 2 videos on the final screen. They continue exactly where this darkness ends. Don't forget to look behind you before you turn off the lights. Good night.